Okay, so we're here. We're in the Palazzo Pubblico looking at one of the walls in the Sala della Pace, and this wall is called The Effects of Good Government in the City and in the Country. Now, I like this image because it helps you understand the size, the scale of the artwork, and also its placement. It's really high up. So our view, if our vantage point, if we were to be there, would be to look up at this scene, and we would have to walk across the room in order to see all of it. So you'd have to move through the city. You'd have to cross under the city gate and then into the countryside. All right, let's look a little closer now. Here we are. So this portion of the wall, we're calling it Peaceful City. And it is a detail from the larger effects of good government in the city and in the country. Got it? Good. Now, what do we see here? Well, there's that city wall, and we see people coming in and out, bustling around this space. Let's look a little bit closer. We see just coming through the gate a horse laden with some, maybe it's a donkey, laden with some heavy loads, maybe some grain. We see some tapestries being made here. We get these merchants, this man, this shepherd, this woman here with a basket on her head, walking towards the center of the city. We see a shop with somebody selling some ware. Inside this archway, we see a sermon. So maybe it's a lecture. We know that Siena has a university. So is this a teacher giving a lecture to the students? And then here, that's definitely a donkey and a guy. And what's he buying? Oh, socks and shoes. Oh, it's like so basic. This is exactly what we do. Here we have this group of maidens coming through and singing songs and dancing. They're kind of doing this ribbon dance around, and they got a tambourine. Look at, she's even got her mouth open. Now, I want you to remember, anytime in art you see a mouth open, there's a sound coming out. So we see these young women dancing around, and then we see this of a tambourine, and then we see her going, oh, how cute, right? Let's look at some more of these details. Some men, maybe at a cafe, talking. We look up. We see the rise of the city above the streets. I mean, we see like basic stuff we would experience today. Like here's a planter, the plant in it. Somebody's repairing a roof up here. Somebody's got this really fancy balcony. It's just beautiful. Like somebody's got a bird cage over here, another planter. So we can easily get lost in all of these details. There's nothing special or specific going on. There's no important people walking through the city. It's just everyday people going about their everyday lives. This type of image or this type of scene we would call a genre scene. So now I've given you a vocabulary term here. Genre scene. Genre scene is meaning subjects from everyday life. Now, this is how I'm going to be introducing key vocabulary words to you. I'm going to include them bold and underlined with the definition. And I want you to, in your notes, write down, the vocab word and that definition, because as we continue through our discussion boards, through our exams, I'm going to be asking you to use your vocabulary words and use them correctly. So I'm going to be looking for things like the use of the genre scene to identify or describe things like Ambrogio Lorenzetti's Peaceful City painting. It's nothing special, nothing sacred. There's no miracles. There's no angels coming down. There's no holy figures here. It's just everyday people going about their everyday lives. It's a genre scene. Got it? Okay, good. Now we've shifted to the other side of the wall. So there's that pink wall, and we're following down into the countryside. This is, this beautiful long landscape of these rolling hills, and the hills are filled with farmsteads. We see crops, we see people working the fields, sowing, planting seeds, or reaping and cutting down the grain that's then being packaged up and brought up into the city. We see the resources of the land being cultivated. The land is full of bounty, clean rivers, soft fields of food as far as the eye can see, right? So again, what we have here is an ideal scene of everyday life. Now, this is not specific to the Siena countryside, but more a generic Italian countryside. So it's not like we can stand on a specific hill and go like, this is the view Lorenzetti's had. Instead, what Lorenzetti's done is he's taken the idea of a peaceful rolling hills of the middle of the Italian peninsula, and he's put it into this larger space. And we see everyday people going about their everyday lives. But how does this then relate to the fact that it's in the Palazzo Pubblico? That's a wonderful question to ask, right? What does this have to do with peace? What does this have to do with being inside of Siena's Palazzo Pubblico? Okay, let's think about it. These people are just going about their everyday lives. What they're not doing is fighting, killing, murdering. They're not, I guess killing and murdering is the same thing. They're not hiding. They're not fearful of their lives and their safety. The fields are plentiful instead of being burned, because guess what? In battles for territory, your enemy would quickly burn all of your crops to basically starve you out of your city gates. So here we don't see any burned fields. Instead, we see fields flourishing with food. What we have is this ideal world of peace and prosperity. It is assumed to be Siena because it's in Siena's Palazzo Pubblico. Let's look at this curious figure floating here. Some of you might have noticed that and been like, is Miss Cortez going to talk about that? Yeah. Here, let me move over here. Okay, so hovering right above the city gate is this flying figure, an angel, right? This angel with wings, and then what is this? A scroll? Yeah, so she's holding this piece of paper that's been rolled out, and what it says in Italian is, let me read it for you. It is basically a promise of safety to all under the rule of law and justice in Siena. So did you hear what I said? It's promising safety to all who follow the rules of Siena. It also is showing you what happens when you don't follow the rules. What happens? If we were in class and look around and I'd see you guys going, and somebody would shout it, you get hanged. Yeah, you see it? This right here, she's like, oh, follow the rules or else you die. So we have this image of peace and prosperity in Siena, but very clearly under the guidance and control of the government, of the Republic. Cool, right? Very clever, very clever. Going back to the city side, we see everyday people in their everyday lives, and we can recognize this as a very densely populated city. Look at how the buildings are all stacked up on one another, how Lorenzetti has piled one in front of the other in front of the other. What this does is it helps give us a sense of depth or space. Now, it's not completely accurate. He's attempting to. I mentioned this not to bag on Lorenzetti, but instead I want you to be aware of this attempt to give us depth and space, because as we continue into the Renaissance, we're going to see artists really perfect this illusion of perspective in a flat painting like this. What I mean by it's good but it's not accurate is, like, look at the shadow. Look at the shadow line. So on this side, the sun is coming down and creating a shadow over here. Okay, that looks great, sure. But then look at this side. Now the sun is coming from this side and creating a shadow over here. And then even within this building, we got the sun seems to be coming from back here, shining down, creating these heavy shadows underneath the arches. But then this one in the front has no harsh shadows. So Lorenzetti is aware of light and shadow and the illusion of space with these lines going back or spreading out to create depth. He hasn't perfected it, but he's really good at it. And we're going to see this continue in advancement into the Renaissance.